Hello, welcome to another episode of Becoming Headstrong. My name is Josh Fisher. I am a mental performance coach with Headstrong Consulting based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and we are here with another team member for month number 2 of season 3 of the Becoming Headstrong podcast. I am here with Coach Kristina. She is awesome enough to
Hello.
join me today. Kristina, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. How are
Yeah.
you?
I'm doing awesome, Christina. I'm super excited to chat with you a little bit about your background in sports psychology, talk a little bit about some nuances in mental performance, and even get a sneak peek about into your podcast series that we're going to be doing for the month of February. Does that all sound
Awesome.
good to you?
Oh yeah, let's do
Awesome, awesome. So one thing Nicole challenged me to do, I don't know if you caught my interview with her in January, but she encouraged me to put every coach on the spot when we started the podcast. So my question to you to put you on the spot, it brings me back to my grad school days, first day of class, introductions and everything, when you get to tell
it.
everybody your fun fact, a fun fact about yourself. So Christine,
Ooh,
I would love for you to share a fun fact about yourself that people would not
um,
know.
about myself. Okay,
Yes.
let's see here. I love to eat food with tiny utensils.
With tiny utensils,
Yeah,
you
like
use little
like
forks and spoons.
appetizer forks and
Oh,
stuff. I
oh,
think
I
it's
know.
so fun to eat with those.
Okay.
I think
I
it's great.
I know
I have
exactly
a
what you're
list
talking
of like 45 random facts
about.
about
Okay.
me
Oh,
that
you
are
got all
super
sorts of
fun.
them.
That was just the
It's
first one that
great.
came up to my
It's
mind.
great to have a list ready because you never know when you're going to get asked that question. So that
Yeah.
that is a very fun fact. So thank you for that. Well, now that we know a little bit about the nuances of Christina's life with the small silverware, let's talk a little bit about psychology. So, Christina, can we start with just, how long have you been with Strong, and I guess just your journey through sports psychology? What kind of brought you into it, and where did you start out?
Yeah, so I began with Headstrong back in 2013, right immediately after I graduated from graduate school. Nicole, who is the owner of Headstrong, was my professor and mentor and everything through graduate school. So immediately when I graduated, she was the one that I approached because I knew that she did the applied side of sports psychology and I was very interested in that. So I went immediately from being in school to being in the field with her, and I've been with her in this company ever since. So I guess over 10 years at this point. But how it all started was my background's in figure skating. So I skated from a very young child. I still compete now, over 30 years later. Um, but when I was younger, a teenager, I had some mental blocks that I was dealing with myself as a competitive figure skater. And I'm a very optimistic, positive person, and I like am very good at working through things.
Yeah.
But my coaches were like, "We think at this point you should go work with a sports psychologist." And I was like, "But I got this. I can work through it." Um, but they encouraged me to go work with a sports psychology consultant. So I worked with a man named Keith Henson, who actually was the mentor for Nicole growing up. I mean, he's amazing in the field. He's very well known, very well respected. I dare say one of the best of all time. Um, so I met with him once to work through the issues that I was dealing with, and he totally changed my entire perspective on what I was doing and how to work through that situation. And it was a very long process for me, like from what he when I first met with him to getting through my obstacles. But but I only met with him once and it changed everything. And I also knew as a figure skater that I would want to coach later on. And I knew I was going to be working with skaters. And all the time, there's always things mentally going on with skaters. And so I knew as a coach that it would be helpful to learn more about sports psychology in general. So I could help skaters in any way when they came to me, um, just as it had helped me. And so I went to school mostly just to learn about it. Like I didn't actually ever see myself getting into the field itself. I just knew I wanted it as a tool. Um, and when I got there, I mean, at that point, I was already coaching and I was still competing. And so I would apply the techniques with my skaters and with myself. And I felt like I learned and like developed a lot of insight into all the aspects of it, like as a skater, as a coach, as a sports psychology consultant, and how it all ties together. And it was really intriguing to me. So I went in with the intent to only work with figure skaters. And then when I was doing my internship work with Nicole, I believe the first sport I worked with was lacrosse, which I knew absolutely nothing about. I was like, I'm an individual sport on the ice, music, all the things. And then it was like team sport, like involving a ball, like things, where I was like, I know nothing about lacrosse. But I learned really quickly that in performance, we all deal with the same things across every sport, no matter the level, the age, what it is that you're doing. We all deal with the pressure, the expectations, nerves. We all need to learn how to focus, how to be motivated. Um, so I found it really easy actually to connect with athletes because I was just like, I've been there on the same level, just maybe in a different venue. Um, so then I started working with like a gymnastics team. And then of course, Nicole just like started setting me up with all sorts of athletes. And um, at first I found it easier to connect with the individual athletes more just because that's what I was with all the time. But then when it started coming down to it, it didn't matter what type of performance it was. I just found that just a connection between performers in general. So anyways, that's basically how I got into it. And so now I work with a lot of sport. I counted once, like
Yeah.
over, there's so many different sports and performers, and some that I never imagined I'd ever work with, which has been really fun. Um,
Isn't
so
that
yeah,
isn't that a fun question to get from when you explain your job to somebody and they ask you
yeah,
what sports you work with and you can't
yeah,
even name them all. I've been in that
yeah,
position too. It's crazy to think about.
yeah. Like I'll always start with, like figure skating, gymnastics, dancers, ballet, golf, because like those are the ones where I really like I just can relate to the absolute
Yeah.
most. But then I was like, but then I've worked with musicians. I've worked with students that are just have anxiety taking tests in school, or like equestrian or aerialists. Like it's
Wow,
so,
equestrian too. You've been all over the place. That's exciting.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's great. I learned a lot too along the way. So that's always fun.
That's a super fun journey. So what I want to
Mhm.
ask you next is I want to kind of bring you back to your early days of competing as a figure
Mhm.
skater, as you talked about. So you've been working as a mental performance coach for over 10 years now with Headstrong and studying sports psychology. What is something that maybe you know now through your education or just experience as a mental performance coach that you wish you had access to or the tools to utilize when you were a younger figure skater?
Um, well, I think first of all, back when I was younger, sports psychology was definitely not as prevalent just
Mhm.
in sports in general. So the fact that I went to see one wasn't super common. So, I mean, for me, I was grateful that I had access, but I think it would have been helpful if more people had had access. So, I mean, in that terms, it's definitely different now than it was then. Um, Now, like knowing what I know, I mean, the thing is, I had a really, really good support system
Yeah.
growing up. Like my
Okay.
coaches were really good at keeping things in perspective. So were my parents. And so for me, like I felt like I kind of had mental performance coaches like there the whole time. So um I'm trying to that's kind of a hard question because I feel like for my experience it was always really good growing up, but um if there were any specific things.
Well, I think you touched
Um
on the support system, which I think is super important. So I appreciate you
yeah.
touching on that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It looked like you just had an aha moment there.
No, you're okay. I was going to say, I think one thing, but it's not necessarily sports psychology related, but I think hearing maybe from people that had been through the experiences more would have been helpful because it's like when you're younger, they're like, at this age, you need to be doing this. And when you're
Mhm.
at this age, you need to be doing this. And so you feel like there's this timeline. Whereas, like, really, I learned through all of this, like, you can do whatever you want whenever you want. And I always kind of kept that mindset for myself, but a lot of people made it seem like it's not how it should be. But I was very persistent and motivated, and I still just did things how I wanted to. But I think doing like seeing that and helping athletes with that, um, it would have been maybe nice to have more of that growing up.
Oh, no, that totally makes sense. That's a great point to share, especially with, the growth of the field of sports psychology. I mean, I didn't
Hmm.
even know what sports psychology was in my undergrad until my junior year. It felt I believe it was my junior year I first even learned what it was. So it's crazy how much
Yeah.
it jumped. So let's jump ourselves here to present day because you shared that you still compete in figure skating and you're also coaching. That's correct, right?
Yes.
You're
Yep.
coaching as well. So how now that you have done it, you have learned these things, you have applied these things. How does what you know about sports psychology shape your approach to either competing yourself or, coaching other performers?
Um, yeah, so it definitely just goes hand in hand. It's like when I'm working with athletes, it's very easy for me to say, I've been there, or like, let's work through this together, or here are some techniques you can use, right?
Mhm.
It's very, very easy to do that. But it's also much easier for me myself when I'm in those situations to have those talks with myself too, where it's like, what would I be telling my athletes right now? And so it definitely goes back and forth. And sometimes I feel like I learn a lot from the skaters too. Like even if my skaters are there, it's just a healthy reminder of like, I've taught them these things. And then like with them there, it reminds me of what I've taught them as well. So it's like we share back and forth all the time. And sometimes even if like they're frustrated or like if I'm getting frustrated, it's like again, just kind of this support system where we all have this understanding and there's different techniques that we know work well with each other and it goes back and forth. So that's neat.
I love it. I love it. I love that you keep going back to your support system too. Every that's a conversation that I have with every athlete I work with. It's just a lot of it always comes back to sports system. So it's great that you keep touching on that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get to an exciting part here because you are leading our podcast series for February. So this
Yeah.
interview will come out the first week of February, the first Tuesday of February, and then each Tuesday following that, we will release a new episode, but from Coach Kristina. So without giving too much away, how can you what kind of sneak peek can you give us into what you'll be talking to all of our listeners
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. So I tried to pick topics that I felt like were very applicable to pretty much anybody. I feel like most topics are, but um first of all, I just know there's this connection between your mind and your body when you're performing. And we always talk about getting them to be in sync. But a lot of times one will be functioning more optimally than the other. So sometimes your mind is functioning more optimally and your body just for whatever reason doesn't feel like it is, or the reverse. Um, and so I wanted to discuss what to do if either of those happen. So if, for instance, you walk into an event and you're feeling like physically you feel good and you know you've put in the work and the time and the energy and you're prepared, but then all of a sudden your mind just goes crazy for whatever reason, even if you've done mental training, but all of a sudden you just feel doubtful and um or uncertain, or you feel the pressure and you just start questioning things. Like how can you rely on your body in those instances to help you get to where you need to be? And then the exact opposite. So maybe physically you're like really tired or you're sick or you feel shaky or tense or whatever it is. Um, you might have, but you can use your mind sometimes. Like sometimes your mind can pull you through those instances too. So I talked about both in different podcasts. So what if you need your mind to lead, to take the lead, and what do you need to do if you need your body to take the lead, and what different techniques can you perhaps use in those moments? Um, we want them both to work together, but that's not always the case, even when you're prepared. So just making the best out of each situation, basically. Um,
Awesome.
so those are the first two. And then the third one, I decided we'd jump outside of the athlete and just talk to the parents directly. Um, just what is it that you can do as a parent to help your child mentally? Like, what are the boundaries? How do you communicate? What are ways that you can show them that you're invested in not only what they're doing, but just also how they're feeling? And um, I feel like I shouldn't give too much, but I definitely wanted the parents to just take a step back and think about how they can be addressing their athletes and their performance as well.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to listen to them, and I'm sure everybody listening to this now is as excited as I am, and they sound like it's going to be super helpful and very a lot. There's going to be a lot to learn, and I can't wait. So that's what we have today for my interview with Coach Christina with the Headstrong family here at Headstrong Consulting. Christina, thank you so much for hopping on with me. It was great to talk to you, and yeah,
Yeah, you too.
it was great to see
I
you
feel
again.
like I should have questions for you. I feel like you need to give me a random fact
Yeah,
now.
it's oh my gosh, a random fact. I usually have so many good ones, but as every time I get put on the spot, I just blank. Okay, a random fact about me is that I'm not lactose intolerant, but I hate cheese more than anything. I cannot stand cheese. If you give me if I'm the kind of person I'll go to a restaurant and ask for a hamburger with no cheese. If I go to Subway or a sub place, no cheese on anything, and I get
Oh,
Beyonce makes fun of me for it all the time, but I hate cheese. So there's a fun fact about me.
that's okay. I hate bacon, so
Wow. Okay. All right. So we both hate some popular foods. Um,
awesome.
well, with that, I want to thank everybody for listening. For more information on Headstrong, you can find us online at headstrongconsulting.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, Snapchat, Threads, and TikTok at Headstrong Team. You are welcome, and yeah, welcome to check us out. Coach Becky leads us through all of that social medias. We have some great content, so please check us out on those platforms. And with that, I will be back next month with our next interview.